Give a brief statement, and we'll just go ahead and go to questions.
Before we jump in, May 1st, today is Gianna Bryant's birthday. So just wanted to wish her a happy birthday, Gigi. We love you. We miss you. So every year we embark training camp, the journey of a season, with the goal of putting another banner up. In any season we don't do that, we've fallen short of our ultimate goal here. That said, this season was full of some exciting things that we really need to lean into for our future. One is the coach sitting next to me. JJ brought just a complete revival of energy and incredibly hard work ethic, attention to detail, a spirit to our team, to our group, to our franchise, as a rookie coach that we haven't seen in a long time. And our level of confidence, my level of confidence, couldn't be higher. He's a great partner to work with. He's an incredible basketball mind, and I know that every year for him will be things to celebrate and learning lessons, and that's just who he is. So that's exciting for the Lakers, for our fan base, and for our future. Second to that, we made a significant and historical transaction at the trade deadline, bringing Luka Doncic here. It's incredibly exciting to have the promise of him and our next decade of Laker basketball with being able to build a team around him and him being at the center of our franchise. Our partnership with him has been incredible. We're appreciative and grateful, and can't wait to get to the work really starting today of getting ready for next year.
Hey, Rob, following up on kind of how you just described things and the excitement of this season, how the round one series ends up going and the disappointment, and how does that impact the way that you look to build the roster, clearly with Luka in mind? And what did you feel like was there? What did you feel like you really want to see as you go forward with JJ and the rest of the group?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize, this team was able to finish third in an incredibly tough Western Conference. And when you make a seismic trade at the deadline, your roster and the building around it, it's kind of like trying to build an airplane in the sky. And now we get a chance to sort of land that plane, put it in the hangar, and really figure out the parts of it that we need to retrofit and change. And that's what we'll do. Lots of things to learn. I think when you make a huge trade at the deadline where you trade your starting center for a point guard, of course that's going to create significant issues with the roster, and we saw some of those play out. We know this offseason, one of our primary goals is going to be to add size in our front court at the center position, and that's going to just be part of the equation. We have, multiple free agents too. Obviously, those questions will get answered in July and in August. But we know we have a lot of work to do on the roster, and it'll look different next year for sure.
And then JJ, you went through the pain of a season ending as a player, and just kind of wonder how you respond even a day later, and what your approach is as you now enter this offseason with some of what Rob had in mind as well, in the building the roster and kind of the excitement towards year two.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, coming in the building today, sort of an eerie, familiar feeling. I've always felt like a team is a living organism, and that season, you've got to feed the organism, and you hope that it's healthy. Certainly every organism has some chronic issues, and you try to address those. And then when you come in after the season, it feels like a funeral, and it feels like the death of that organism. And that's, in a moment of reflection this morning, I think that's the sad part and the disappointing part is, we wanted this group to have an opportunity to play for a championship. We didn't obviously deliver on that. As a player, I can remember vividly a season ending in the playoffs. Get on the plane, flight back, it's quiet. You're writing down everything you want to be better at. And that's no different as a coach. And I think that's where my mind goes today, immediately. It's how can I be better? And I'm going to take a lot of time. And thankfully this offseason I have more time than last offseason to really self-evaluate and listen to my coaching staff, listen to players, listen to feedback from RP, and figure out ways I can be better and ways I can help get us closer to that ultimate goal of hanging banner number 18.
Coach, you're talking about ways of getting better. In your mind, what are some of the ways this team needs to get better in order to get back and get another flag?
I think I'll start with the offseason and the work that's required in an offseason to be in championship shape. And, we have a ways to go as a roster. And certainly there are individuals that were in phenomenal shape. There's certainly other ones that could have been in better shape. That's where my mind goes immediately is we have to get in championship shape. And then, I know Rob talks about the roster. Look, I think this group, we figured out a way to make it work, and I had full confidence in all the guys. And you certainly want individual improvement, but then you got to figure out whatever that roster looks like on October 1st. Again, it's resetting. How do I maximize this group? How does our coaching staff maximize that group? And it could be different, May 1st, June 1st, July 1st, August 1st. We have to be prepared for that. And ultimately, it's about trying to maximize the group, whatever that group looks like.
Thank you.
Rob, a question, I guess, kind of big picture. When you look at the core with Luca and LeBron and Austin, did anything change in how you view those three as being kind of 10 poles of what you're doing based on a first-round exit? And I guess how would you assess where they were as a unit, those three players, and how they fit together?
Yeah, the level of confidence in Austin Reeves, LeBron James, and Luka Doncic is at an all-time high still. So no change in how we feel about those three guys. And in terms of assessing it, we lost this series, so we did not accomplish what we wanted to do, which was win in this series. But in every series, to me, it's like a game of chess. You learn, and then when you get to play the game the next time, you're better. But I think those three guys have incredible promise playing together. And we will collectively do a better job to make sure they're surrounded with the right pieces to have ultimate success. And we talked at the beginning what ultimate success is here, and we're going to put in the work to allow that group of guys to win a championship.
And then for JJ, we sat with you on your first day on the job, and we kind of outlined in a lot of ways what the style you wanted to play and different things like that. Obviously, it changed 20 or 30 times, it felt like, during the season. Was there anything about maybe sustainability, about playing small for extended stretches or anything like that you feel like you'll take out of the season into the philosophy about the game and about coaching it in the future?
I don't necessarily think my philosophy has changed. Again, you have to maximize whatever group you have. So the philosophy doesn't change. I recognize the need for size, and certainly Gobert in games 4 and 5 really hurt us on the offensive glass. But it is about, what do you have in front of you? So I can have a philosophy. I can want to play up tempo and move the ball side to side and run 7 different actions on a given possession. Is that what's best for my group? If the answer is no, then I'm not going to do that. So it is about just trying to figure out what's best for the group. I think that's my guiding philosophy, more so than some overarching theme about personnel.
Rob, looking back to the trade deadline, how do you feel like the rescinded trade with Charlotte affected how things played out from that point on?
Yeah, so there's NBA rules that prohibit us from speaking to a particular transaction. But I'll say in general, it's very clear, and it was clear then, and we spoke to it, that this team and this roster needs more size and needs a center position. That's a very clear and obvious byproduct of trading potentially the best big in the league to Dallas to get a point guard. Of course, that's going to open up a huge hole. And as I said before, the trade deadline and the moments up to it don't allow you the requisite time to explore every single unturned stone to add a big to our roster. We just didn't have the time after the Luca trade, but now we do. That's the good news. And clearly we'll be very diligent. We'll be very detailed. We'll work hard. You got the NBA Combine coming up here in a couple weeks in Chicago. That's when a lot of the executives get together and start talks about off-season planning and roster construction. And the one thing we know about the NBA is there's always new and unexpected opportunities around the corner. That's just the nature of this business, and that my focus is going to be on that and making sure that next year we have the requisite size to have a team that can compete for a championship.
And JJ, in LeBron's end of season remarks last night, he complimented your job as head coach, and he acknowledged that being the head coach of the Lakers is a lot different than maybe any other job in the league. Part of your perspective being that guy, do you evaluate your players in terms of, are they built for this market, this pressure cooker, this environment that's the day-to-day grind? And if you do have that perspective, how did you feel about your group's ability to handle what that requires to succeed in?
Yeah, you certainly factor that in. I would say you factor that in regardless of the market. We all know what the Lakers is. I talked about it when I did my opening press conference. I know what I signed up for, and I know there's a lot of blame that gets placed on me, and I'm willing to accept that. Believe me, no one's harder on me than me. In terms of our players, I think they handled it well all season, and we certainly had ups, and we certainly had downs, and we were able to weather that as a group. I think it's hard sometimes to admit this, and maybe this is hard sometimes for a coach or a player to admit this. We lost to a better team. I mean, that's just the reality. We did, and we put ourselves in a position to win games 3, 4, and 5, and we weren't able to do that in the fourth quarter. And that's where I think you really have to evaluate and really try to grow from as a coach, and certainly as a group, whatever that group looks like next year. Minnesota is a great basketball team. They really are. I said that before the series. I knew that coming into this. But I think our guys were able to handle all the pressure and all the ups and downs throughout the season in a very good manner.
Hey, Rob. To follow up on the center position, what specific traits are you looking for? What type of skill set? And then are there any other needs you're looking at? Obviously, that's the top one, but needs 2 or 3 going into the summer.
Yeah, I think in terms of center traits, it would be great to have a center that was a vertical threat, lob threat, and someone that could protect the interior defensively. I think those would be keys. But there's multiple different types of centers that can be very effective in the league. There's also spread centers that can protect the rim. We'll look at those as well. So I wouldn't want to limit the archetype, but we know we need a big man. And then I think in terms of just solidifying our defensive core on the wings and just making sure that we have players that can defend the wing position. That's a essential need. We see it playing out in the playoffs, and anytime you can upgrade your defensive core on the perimeter, I think that's going to help.
And then for JJ, Luca mentioned that when he and Kyrie teamed up that first like half season, they didn't quite have the chemistry that they felt they needed. And it took the summer and having a training camp, having a preseason to kind of figure things out offensively. What do you think would be the benefit with this group moving forward with Luca, LeBron, and Austin, and just having that training camp to install things and just, build things maybe differently?
Yeah, Greg St. Jean was with Dallas that year, and so he's kind of spoken to me about that it's nothing malicious, it's nothing intentional, but these things take time, particularly with star players. There's a reason in the modern NBA history, go back the last 30, 40 years, there's been a handful or less than a handful of all-star players traded in season that led directly to a championship. These things take time. So I think there's a great benefit in a full off season. I know those guys will be communicating. Hopefully we can get them together at some point for some sort of mini camp. And then going through training camp preseason, again, that's sort of where you build the foundation and the building blocks for the rest of the year. I think there's value in repetition, and frankly, we didn't get a ton of repetition, and that's the nature of making an in-season trade. But certainly feel very confident and very optimistic about those three going forward.
I'll just add to that too. I think when your foundation for those three players is that they're players of high character and a highly competitive nature, that's the perfect starting point. To have three players like that. LeBron's a selfless player, high character. All he cares about is winning. Luka Doncic the same. Austin Reeves the same. I think when you get those three pillars in a training camp environment and you're starting to build an ethos around them, that's a great starting point. And we didn't have that opportunity this year, but we will next year.
Morning, Rob. First one for you. Going back to JJ's introductory press conference, he mentioned that looking to create margins, whether it's, I think you mentioned turn the ball or turnovers, offensive rebounding down the line. You mentioned looking for a center, even defensive wing. When you look at certain players, are you going to be looking, I guess, for players who can widen those margins in ways that if you guys had that players in the series, maybe it could have gone a little differently?
Yeah, I think we started training camp with. We launch it every year with the training camp T-shirt. It was about the details, and I think JJ and his staff stayed committed to that. And we know the playoffs are won in the margins. Game 4 came down to a couple plays at the end, a referee call last night. The game was close going down the stretch. So we've got to live in those details, and then we've got to find players that care about the details and commit to obsessing about the details. So whatever players we bring in through free agency or trade, those core characteristics are going to be at the center.
And then JJ, we spoke with Luca last night. He called you a hell of a coach. He even said that at times it feels like he's back in Europe. What was that bond like? I guess rebuilding that bond after you guys were teammates in Dallas, and I guess building that synergy out looking forward.
Yeah. Well, I was only in Dallas for 2.5 months. We both had an immediate bond to each other, despite our age difference, despite he wasn't a father then. I had 2 kids. We've kept in touch. We've spent a little bit of time together in the last 3 years. So I think that bond that was already there gave us a great starting point as a player coach. I think our first conversation when he flew into LA that night. He wants to be coached. He wants to be held accountable. And I think, he's expressed to me, and what I've expressed to him is very similar. I want to bring out the best version of Luca, and that's what he wants from me. And so that's the partnership going forward. That's the expectation, and that's sort of the baseline of what we're trying to do. Let's try to bring out the best version of Luca and hopefully win a championship doing that.
I guess this could either be for Rob or JJ. Given that center depth and size was going to be an issue, regardless heading into this series, and Alex never really gained any traction in the rotation, what was the thought process behind not converting either Trey or Christian?
Just that we thought Alex was a good player that deserved to be on our roster. And then the coach, ultimately, JJ is going to make the decisions of who plays and who doesn't.
My question's for Rob. Bronny and Dalton over here. Bronny and Dalton were the rookies added to the roster, and they contributed to the team. What did you think of their first season of development here?
Yeah, we talked a lot in training camp about leaning into development, and I think you saw great growth from Bronny and Dalton. I think taking them separately, Bronny's work with South Bay Lakers was, you can look at the numbers and see his trajectory and growth and maturity. Super impressed with the way that our coaching staff wrapped around him, led by Coach Ty and Bronny, having a great relationship, seeing how they work, seeing how they broke down film. He's a guy that shows up every day trying to get better. We appreciate that quality about him, and it played out. And Dalton, too. I think he continued even when he fell out of the rotation as the stretch of the season played out in the playoffs. He was in the gym every day, leading Stay Ready group, bringing a constant energy. He's already talked about what he wants to do this offseason in terms of adding to his strength and adding to his endurance and his ability to defend and be physical in the league. So I'm proud of both of those guys for sure.
Good morning, Rob and JJ. JJ, to build off the point you made about wanting the team to be in championship shape, what do you all expect what the off-season regimens will look like so that they're better prepared to be in championship shape?
That's something that we'll build out over the next couple weeks with our player development coaches, our performance staff, our training staff. We obviously recognize it's a long season, and some guys have routines, and it's not that we're looking to completely break routines, but we do want to have a program in place for each guy so that when they come back in mid-August, September, we can build off of that and start training camp in a really good spot conditioning-wise.
JJ, back here. I know from day one, more of a philosophical question, you talked about wanting to instill a level of joy in your foundation. Last night, you heard a lot of guys talk about, despite the result, the excitement of wanting to come to work every single day. Just through your lens throughout the season, how would you kind of assess their willingness to embrace that philosophy of yours, and how do you take that to the next level?
Well, from my lens, we had a group of people from coaches, players, performance, training staff, our culinary staff. We had a group of people, our equipment staff, who enjoyed coming to work every day. I said this to PJ Carlissimo last year during the playoffs. We were at dinner after one of the Eastern Conference Finals games, and he was talking about me coaching, and I said, there's two things that I think are guiding my coaching philosophy. One is, do you maximize the group? And the second is, do people enjoy coming to work? Now, we'll obviously get feedback on that from our players, but I know from our coaching staff and in talking to them over the last few weeks, all of them have had a great experience this year. Largely that's because we have great veteran leadership with Scotty and Nate and a great group of people. But I think everybody who came in this building both embraced all our values, the work, the joy, the respect, the trust, all of the things we talked about from day one. We had that in this building.
Hey, JJ, just curious to get your thoughts on just your overall first year as the head coach. How important is this for you, for your own personal development from a head coaching perspective, to have the highs, the lows, the praise, the criticism, just for your own personal experience, just that overall thought?
I look at everything as an opportunity for growth, and I don't. Giannis had a press conference a couple of years ago where he talked about failure versus success, and I think I look at things more as a river, and it's all part of one long, winding journey. And along that, you might run into a dam, you might run into the beaver's work. We've talked about that before. You just never know what things come along on that journey. And so you have to be willing to embrace failure, and you have to be willing to embrace success, but you have to be able to grow in both. And so I think everything that happened this year with the players, the staff, the wins, the losses, all of that has been incredibly beneficial. And I'm not ready for the offseason. None of us are. But this will be a great offseason for me and my staff to continue to grow as well.
Hey, Rob. LeBron's kind of served as a Swiss Army knife for you guys over the years, filling whatever role you guys need. If he does come back, will you approach the roster building this offseason with one specific kind of role in mind for him, or is it more just let's build the best roster possible and then he's willing to do whatever is necessary?
LeBron is a GOAT, one of the GOATs of the game, and he's a completely selfless leader, and I think we saw that in this playoff series, moving to playing more off the ball and committing to the defensive end, and I think it's just a testament to his championship DNA and character, and I think LeBron's going to have high expectations for the roster, and we're going to do everything we can to meet those, but I also know that whatever it is, he's going to still give his 100% every night, whether that's scoring, assisting, defending, rebounding, leading. We know that's going to always be 100%, never wavers.
Hi, this question is for JJ. Rui yesterday talked about how coaching staff believed in him and that helped him grow as a basketball player. You also gave him responsibility defensively and rebounding. How do you assess how he played, especially in the playoffs, and what do you expect him to be working on this summer?
I thought Rui had an outstanding season, and he was incredibly important to what we were able to do this year. He was just he was a vital cog on both sides of the ball, and in the games that he missed, it was apparent to the coaching staff how valuable he was, and particularly in the last two games, I thought he played extremely well in the playoffs. I'm excited to see his growth, and I think some of that is paint decision making, some of that is working on his handles and his closeouts, but for a guy, of all the guys, that we laid out what we expect from them, what we're asking them to do, and starring in their role, he's up there at the top of the list for just embracing that and starring in that role all year.
Rob, I'm curious kind of, you went into last summer with the aprons and dealing with some of the new limitations of the CBA. I'm curious, what were some of the team building lessons from that experience? What were some of the team building lessons from working around a LeBron AD core that are going to be applicable as now the core is shifted? The rules are you're a little more familiar with them. What are some of the things that you can take to as you kind of try to build this out here for the next sort of generation?
I think anytime there's a new system put into place, it's going to take some time to kind of figure out what the aftershocks of a new system are. And there was a lot of talk last year about the restrictions of the first apron and the second apron, and there was people trying to forecast what the trade deadline might look like 2 months before the trade deadline came, and then all of us witnessed it was not only for the Lakers but for the league in general like a huge and historic trade deadline. So I think the lessons of the system are there's still ways to transact, and I think this offseason too there's going to be a lot of movement around the NBA. It just feels that way. There's so many aggressive leaders of organizations that are expecting now success, and so I think there'll be a lot of opportunities for us to look at. I really do. I'm excited about the offseason and what will come our way.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.